These are found in your athletic wear because the majority of the athletic clothing globally is from petrochemicals. It's polyesters and it's stretch elastane. And the polyester fibers are 100% plastic or petrochemical. And how do you color those? Those colors are the dyes, and those dyes and the printing inks are all a cocktail of these toxic chemicals.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. And Dotsie and I are here with you together again. Dotsie, I missed you last week. Where were you and what were you doing?
No.
So important that you couldn't be with us.
I missed y'all too. You had such a fantastic guest. I know, I'm jealous. I was jealous, but it was it was another quick trip to Washington, D.C. for some lobbying on Add Soy. And we've gotten to a point where
now tell people though what Add Soy is, just so, because there's some people who might not know.
Oh, how dare they not know?
I know.
This for 3 years. People. Okay. So as most Americans know, but certainly our audience is not just Americans, but here in the United States, our children in the National School Lunch Program, which we have about 50 million, it's definitely not billion yet. Then we're going to have a real planet problem, aren't we, Sandra? 50 million kids in our school system here, and about 30 million of them are on the breakfast and lunch program, which they get free breakfast and lunch. And we have had since 1946, when the National School Lunch Program was put into play by President Harry Truman. It was Senator Richard B. Russell, and that's the act that was signed to bring, part of this act was to bring dairy milk into schools, and that be the only option for a beverage. And it was post-war, and we had quite a bit of extra commodities on our hands because we weren't feeding Allied troops anymore. And so I'm sure the intention was golden back in 1946, but we're 73 years later, and we still have one choice for children, and that is the milk from a cow, half pint at breakfast and half pint at lunch. And we have upwards of 75, 80, 85, 90% of children of color, basically all who are not white Northern European descent, have debilitating issues when they try to digest dairy. So lactose intolerance, but also allergies, and the severity of the lactose intolerance, it can certainly be different between different children depending on how bad it is, and just inflammatory issues. But as my lobbying partner, Daryl Thompson, was saying in some of our meetings last week, just a few days ago, he said, it's really hard to focus on algebra when you're dancing in your shoes. And he is a Black man who is wildly lactose intolerant and certainly remembers this, one drink that he had to choose, and didn't know. So many of the kiddos, they have no idea what's wrong. They don't even really necessarily realize it was the milk, because they had a milk, but they also had lunch, and, not really knowing what it is. So we are working really hard to bring in a plant-based option alongside the dairy. And it's people have been, we've gotten some yucky emails, let's say, from some of our folks that have signed the Add Soy Act, and by signed I mean to send letters into their representative and their senators, because it's soy milk that we're suggesting. And that sole reason, although I mean, I love all the plant milks, and I myself love soy and soy milk, but the sole reason is because the U.S. dietary guidelines put soy milk into the U.S. dietary guidelines in 2020, that version, as macronutriently equivalent to dairy milk. So Congress, they have gone against the dietary guidelines, but they don't usually. And so we had to go with what the dietary guidelines looks at as nutritionally equivalent to cow's milk. Like, we don't have really other options. We can't just randomly say almond milk, coconut milk, rice milk, because those are not in the DGA. That's why we went in that direction. So we have 50 co-sponsors of the bill. It is a bill, Bill 1619 in in the House of Representatives and 2943 in the Senate, bipartisan bill on both sides. And it's been a journey, but we are definitely getting there. And we had exciting news, I think, from Mitt Romney's office. We need as many Republicans on. You can't pass a bill that just has co-sponsors from one side or the other. He was wonderful. We met with the chief of staff of Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, and he's an athlete, and and a Black man, and he was like, that was me in school. So many of the staffers say, yes, it was a problem, and there was more information 10 years ago than there was 73 years ago, and it really didn't know it was happening. He said the kiddos definitely need to have a choice. And Congressman Mark DeSaulnier from like the San Francisco area, California, he met with us, because usually we meets with the chief of staff, right, or their legislative assistant. So he was there, and he just didn't really know what lactose tolerance actually is, right? He really know about the lactase enzyme. So many people don't. I mean, I didn't until I started this, and nobody, teach this stuff in school. And he said, gosh, I learned so much every time, but really wants to partner with us on this as well. So it was a joy to sit down with the congressman. But we are, so many of you write in, how's it going? What's happening? So we're making strides. We're definitely making strides forward. And we'll see if this is able to get stuffed into the Farm Bill. And by stuffed, I say that because Richard B. Russell Act, National School Lunch Program Act, bills are traditionally not supposed to be a part of the Farm Bill, but they have been in every single Farm Bill that has ever passed. So they definitely, that can definitely happen. I don't know that they'll pass the Farm Bill this year. They probably won't. Actually, when I was in Washington, the text had just come over, 600 some odd pages to the House, and the Senate version 900 some odd pages. So they've literally just put it together. So
you don't think they'll pass it at all, or you think it'll be heavily amended by the time it gets to the final vote?
I mean, most of Washington says it's doubtful that it'll pass this year. I mean, it'll pass, like it's going to pass, but at least by next year. I mean, they have to do it, but just because of the political disarray that we are in right now, it seems most of the staffers are like, yeah, we'll see. Doubtful, just kind of pessimistic about it really happening this year.
Wow, because a lot of farmers depend on those subsidies, as we know.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just dairy farmers, but yeah. So
right.
Wow.
Right.
Okay, well, you kind of get a pass for not showing up last week because you were doing important work in DC.
It was good to be there. The sun was out, so that was nice, because it is not fun to run between the Senate buildings and the House buildings in the rain. I've done it many times. They're kind of far apart. You do get your exercise, but I guess, just to our audience, I'm so appreciative and so grateful. So many of them have written in, and we do get the question all the time. Oh, can I write in a second time? Yes, absolutely. Your senators and your congressperson want to hear from you. It really is important. They want to hear from their constituents. They don't always just want to hear from me, running my mouth in Washington if it's not from my district, right? So it's extremely important, and it's very, very easy to go write to your congressperson and your senators if you just go to switchforgood.org. We literally have a huge block. Our Add Soy Act gives kids healthier choices at school, and you just click on the button that says help our kids, and you can, and it's a pre-written letter. You can certainly change it. You can certainly delete it and write your own. But if you want to send what we have pre-populated in there, it's easy to do. And then you put in your address, right? Because it has to go to your correct representative and senators.
It's super easy to do, folks. It'll take you 2 minutes and you'll feel good about it for days afterwards because you're making a difference. So thank you, Dotsie, for all your work in that area. It's very, very important.
Thank you for being such a model of taking action, Alexandra. You are
I follow your lead.
No, it's the other way around. But yeah.
Anyway, we have a great guest today. So Dotsie, why don't you introduce her? And I think people are going to learn a lot, right?
Okay, got a question. What do BPA, PFAS, pesticides, formaldehyde, and heavy metals all have in common? Well, they're just some of the dangerous substances that could be found in your clothing. They can cause skin irritation, allergies, and even disrupt your endocrine system. Prolonged exposures to these toxins, often used in conventional manufacturing processes, can lead to more serious long-term health issues. But today, we are very fortunate to welcome a pioneer in regenerative fashion to our show. Lydia Wendt is the founder and design director of California Cloth Foundry, a brand dedicated to revolutionizing the fashion industry through eco-friendly and ethical practices. Yay on that. Mm-hmm. Lydia's impressive background includes working with iconic designers and brands such as Tom Ford, Calvin Klein, Bloomingdale's, and Jones New York. She has also taught textile design at the Academy of Art University's internationally recognized fashion department. And in 2014, she established California Cloth Foundry, intending to counter fashion's decline in ethics, environmental standards, and quality. Using her vast industry knowledge, Lydia leads CCF in partnering with nature and the community, producing stunning and eco-friendly textiles that enhance the well-being of our planet. But Lydia's story isn't just about professional milestones. She faced a profound personal challenge when she experienced a health scare during her second daughter's early years. This experience further fueled her commitment to environmentally conscious living. So join us as we delve into Lydia's inspiring journey, her innovative approaches, and her vision for the future of fashion. Welcome to Switch for Good, Lydia.
Thank you, Dotsie. Thank you, Alexandra. It's great to be here. I'm in downtown Los Angeles in my studio right now.
Incredible. Well, I started the intro with some scare tactics for our audience, and I was like, oh my gosh. So let's just kind of start right with that, with the beginning of the intro, what we learned, and tell us how our clothes are making us sick. Like, what are the dangers of petroleum-based fabrics and dyes and some of the other yucks that I mentioned?
Petroleum-based fabrics and dyes are, maybe people understand what they are. I think more specifically, people are now beginning to understand that polyesters and nylons are from petrochemicals. So we call it plastic clothing. What they don't understand is that even your beautiful organic cotton t-shirt or wonderful linen or, let's say, athletic wool clothing is actually also doused in petrochemicals, the same ones that are plastic. They're from crude oil and from natural gas. It's the plastic dyes and then the natural gas solvents. And what you mentioned before, PFAS, those are forever chemicals. Those are petrochemicals that are used as coatings and finishes to either repel dirt or preserve color or both. BPA, you mentioned BPA maybe or maybe not.
Yes.
And phthalates and BPA. So those are combinations of petrochemicals that do either one of two things, and probably abundant number of other performance quality enhancing characteristics. BPAs traditionally harden the plastic. So that would possibly be the yarn. There's BPA possibly in the yarn. There's BPA in your printing inks. In many of the, it's been found, it's all over CNN, and other publications, and maybe NIH has talked about it. Environmental Working Group has spoken about it.
Right.
These are found in your athletic wear because the majority of athletic clothing globally is from petrochemicals. It's polyesters and it's stretch elastane. And the polyester fibers are 100% plastic or petrochemical. And how do you color those? Those colors are the dyes, and those dyes and the printing inks are all a cocktail of these toxic chemicals, including endocrine disruptors, of BPA and phthalates. So I'll just add one more time. I think I began with, even if you are wearing an organic cotton or wool or natural fibered made garment, it is a minimum 31%, probably up to 50% of that fiber, of that yarn, of that garment is the toxic dyes and printing inks. So it's on top of this pristine natural fiber, which is, I'm wearing head to toe, and it's all over my studio right now. You have a great fiber. It grows naturally. Hopefully you don't grow it with pesticides. That's another issue.
Yeah.
But then in the processing, in the milling, in the dyeing, in the printing, in the finishing, in the coating, in the PFAS additives to finish it, to repel and keep it bright, that's where all of these toxins are coming into play. Those toxins that are right on top of that fiber, the original fiber, let's say, is cotton, or if the original fiber is plastic, it's polyester. All of those toxins piled on top for color and performance are what are shedding onto your skin and into your body as you're exercising in them or just wearing them out in the sunshine. You know, all of that is coming off into your skin. It's also being washed into our waterways, and it's found all over our oceans. There's not one pristine body of water or even cloud probably now in our sky that doesn't have these microplastic fibers and chemistry in them.
Okay. We're definitely going to want to understand how this happened, why it's allowed to continue happening. But don't worry, folks, we're going to get to solutions, because that was just a lot of like, I just want to go take all my clothes off right now immediately and just do this podcast naked, because it's a good idea. Okay, I'll be right back, you guys. No, but we're in
California.
Yeah, right. I could do it. I would be fine. So I mentioned in the intro, let's back up just a little bit, because you had your own health crisis that motivated you to develop this business.
Yes.
So that you were not adding more toxins into the world. Do tell us what happened.
Okay. Thank you for introducing that. So I had already spent about 15, 20 years in the industry, from New York to San Francisco. And when I was in San Francisco raising my kids, I was working towards a sustainable fashion job and, you know, moving my career, because I had already a boatload of knowledge about the toxins and about what we were doing, contributing to the rise of fast fashion, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was, I had my second child, and I was breastfeeding her when I was diagnosed. So at that point, that was the turning point where I not only dove into sustainable fashion, but also knowing that there were environmental impacts and reasons why, as a young mom, I was diagnosed with breast cancer when that's not really an average age. I knew it was environmental, but I also wanted to know whether it had something to do with clothing and the supply chain.
Yeah.
So I didn't just stop with sustainable fashion, like recycled plastic bottles into polyester yarns into clothing and maybe organic cotton. I dove deep to make sure that there were no toxins, not low toxin, you know, just conventional petrochemical dyes on organic cotton fibers, but no toxins. So that was my turning point of there's no, I'm not going to go halfway. It's all the way natural fashion. Yeah. So natural dyes, natural fibers, natural printing inks, and coatings. If we do coat something for performance, that also has to be from plants, minerals, and proteins with absolutely no toxins.
You got breast cancer very young, comparatively, and you had worked in the fashion industry, and you were making clothes. So do you feel that part of it was not just the wearing clothes, which we're all vulnerable to, but the fact that you were around all these chemicals?
There's, you know, I do think about that. There's a lot of research there. The River Blue is an amazing movie to see. I mean, it's hard to watch, but near many of these dye plants, mills, and also cotton farming, the cancer is higher. It's more organ cancers. Children are, you know, not as healthy. In River Blue, the the average age for workers at these mills is like early 20s. They don't last longer. They get sick. They can't work any longer than maybe late 30s. So I did have a feeling that I could have possibly been, my breast cancer might have been contributed to through environmental, aspects of my career as well. Yeah. I mean, I didn't work in the fields where they grew the fibers. I did not work in the mills, but I did travel to all the mills, and I was in cutting rooms and sewing factories in New York City from like age 20 until 31. So, that's your fertility window. It could have something to do with it. I was just going to keep that in my back pocket and not dive into that research any farther. I was just going to stop it.
It reminds me of a book I read on like vegan textiles, and there's a lot of research in there showing really what happens in the animal-based textile industry. And the folks who put together the animal skins and animal hides and make them into couches and chairs and beds, even in India, obviously animal skin has to be coated with an extraordinary amount of toxins, petroleum based, and the average age of life is 52.
That's actually River Blue, and that's what I was actually quoting. I didn't dive
okay. Deep. Okay. I was like, that sounds right. Yes. And so even if people say, oh, I don't really care about the animals, like leather's fine, it's not fine. It's not fine at all for you and your family.
Exactly. Yes. And it wasn't always that way. I'm not a proponent of use of leather, but historically, before we had all these toxins, they called it brain tanning. So they used the enzymes in the brain of that hide to tan it. So, diving into some green chemistry, I know it's kind of gross to think about, but if you're using the whole animal, that is how the hides were tanned, by that animal's natural enzymes. And we finish our fabrics, we treat our fabrics with natural enzymes, not animal enzymes, but natural enzymes that are used in cheese making, in beer making. And so there were traditionally green, chemistry options. There were no other options, right? It just became super hyper toxic because of the discovery of this chemistry and the price point and the ease of use.
If these chemicals that they're putting on all these textiles and fabrics and our clothes,
right?
Why is the U.S. government allowing this? Are there other countries that are more stringent with these kind of chemicals?
It's really hard for the U.S. government to spend all their money testing imported apparel. And the knowledge of these toxins they've been slowly emerging over the last 20 years, but the government, they test food and drugs. They're not really testing consumer products until somebody brings it to their attention. And then it's super costly. In Europe, they are, especially the UK, there's a lot of advancement in banning chemistry, in banning chemicals. In America, in the 90s, we used an abundance of rayon, and rayon is actually wood pulp that is extracted through a liquid solvent, and it turns it into a long strand fiber that is similar to silk. And that's how polyester is made as well. But the traditional rayon formula and the solvent was so toxic that America did ban it. So it probably because it got into our soil and somebody, brought it to the federal government's attention. So what did the American the American mills do? They sold it to China. They shipped it overseas because they invested so much money in the infrastructure of rayon manufacturing and huge amounts of chemistry that they would then have already invested in. And because it was banned before they could use it, they shipped it to other mills and sold it, overseas. And then the rayon was being produced over there, and they used it in bamboo for a while. And it was causing brain damage in the communities, in children in the communities around this chemical usage.
So do we not have rayon anymore? I feel like we have rayon.
Yeah.
There's a new type of rayon. It's called Tencel Model. That's a brand, but it is viscose. So it is the solvents are now enzymatic. So they are natural. So it took this toxic, process and discovering how toxic it was by people getting sick and children downstream with brain damage, or, stunted brain growth development, for this to be banned. And I think that is actually how the industry works. Any product, unless it's food or drugs, and I don't know how that industry works. I just know that a product comes out, it's great, it feels great, it looks great, it performs great. We don't know what its toxic levels are, and there's really no standard yet for testing this.
Because we don't just have to swallow something, right? We know the skin is our largest organ.
Yes.
So what we put on it is extremely important. How did scientists figure out that these different chemicals that are putting on clothes were making people sick? Did it start with the folks that dove in and made the documentary, the film River Blue? And because, there's probably crap all over the shirt I'm wearing, and I can get, all sorts of different styles of cancer in different organs, but I don't, we don't know where it came from. So
Right.
how is the root figured out that it would be coming from our clothing?
It's only one of the places it's coming from.
Well,
and
sure.
So that's
Right.
even more difficult, right?
Yep.
I think, I can't say, because that's not my area of expertise. I mean, I did a conference with the director of that film, and it was already, my company had been launched for 5 or 6 years already. We know there's this knowledge that a number of the chemicals in dyes and in printing inks are toxic, just because it's killing the life in the rivers downstream, right? So that's a few years. You've seen that for maybe 10, 20, 30 years. Greenpeace has been all over it. What is the color of the season? What is the Pantone color of the year? Well, just look stream from a mill. So that has been something that has been, that's common knowledge. But then how do you attack that? How do you test it? I would say the highest concentration, as we talked about before, and why possibly my cancer at such an early age happened at such an early age, because there's a concentration of its use in the supply chain, right? Even if you're at the yarn stage or the textile stage or the printing or the cutting and the sewing stage, you're working with it every single day. So that's kind of the canary in the coal mine. Yeah.
I think they also know that these chemicals from other uses that are unhealthy. I mean,
Yes, right.
plastic.
Other consumer products, right?
Yeah. So we actually like to blame the mills, right? And you talked about how their emissions will kill the fish in the water and dye it a certain color depending upon what the color of the year is, for example. But when we wash our clothes, and I didn't realize this, our clothes deteriorate a little bit every time. What are they putting into the water and to I guess the ocean? I mean, tell us what happened.
It's not only the mills, and I'm gonna support these mills for a minute, because these mills, their margins are so tiny, and they are told that their prices are still too high, and they're given less expensive material to work with. They'll work with it because then they can at least support their margins, and they have to be banned. It has to be policy, because this will continue, because we're not paying the true cost for clothing. So if you're talking then about that clothing in your closet and you're wearing it, not only is it obviously coming off in wear and tear because you're moving and nothing is, well, polyester, it sheds slower. But when you're wearing the polyester and heating it up, right, because you're, exercising in it, it's sloughing off just like your skin does. It's sloughing off fibers, it's sloughing off chemicals. So when you're washing it, of course, it's being agitated. You're giving it some soap and hot water, and it's going to slough more off into the fibers and the chemicals into the water. And it's very hard. I mean, they've got filters and things for this, but the fibers are too fine, and the chemicals are also coming off in your water. So I took a sailboat ride with 5Gyre for the oceans. It's a nonprofit around protecting the oceans, trying to get plastic out of the ocean. And we skimmed the bay up in San Francisco for microfibers and then tested it. And the majority of fibers that we skimmed out of the bay that day, the majority of them, are over 50%, were natural fibers. The scary part is that those natural fibers, I think I mentioned it before, those natural fibers that have been through the washing cycle, wash many times probably, still contain 31% by weight petrochemicals on them. So this pristine, again, cotton or linen fiber or wool fiber actually has 31% by weight in the bay. So it probably had higher. So that is what we're doing to our waterways. And there's nothing we can do about it unless we don't wash them. How do you
Right.
not wash clothing?
And fast fashion also, which I'd like you to speak a little to, because I think Dotsie, you mentioned it in the beginning.
Right.
Their clothes are cheaper and wear down faster. And tell us about the difference between fast fashion, slow fashion, and your cloth foundry, which has natural fashion. You
Natural
call it.
fashion, right? I call it natural fashion. Yeah. Well, fast fashion wasn't around when I began. I didn't know about it. It wasn't a phrase when I was working in the 90s in New York City. And I actually believe that we were part of the rise of fast fashion, and mostly because we started to produce higher and higher quantities overseas. So that's the first. And you're doing 20,000 units in 4 different colors in another country. You're working remotely. You usually send an agent who speaks the language, and you communicate long distance, online, right? And so the speed in which we can communicate now, just before this podcast or this Zoom call this morning, you would ask me, Alexandra, to test the speed of my upload download on my computer. Well, if you think about it, the speed in which information is traveling is the speed in which fast fashion is growing. So the more information, the faster you can make things, the faster you can market it, the faster the trends are, the faster the trends die as the piles of clothing pile up because people won't wear something that's not on trend, and they didn't spend a lot of money on it anyway.
And Lydia, that just to be clear, are we talking like Old Navy, Zara, those type of? Okay, I don't. I mean,
Yeah,
I didn't always know what fast fashion was either. So just for our audience, it's
H&M,
like
Forever
H&M.
21. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you call it Shein. Some people say Shane, but Shein, Shein. Yeah.
So it's inexpensive clothes that are trendy,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
And because you know what's on trend like every moment of every day, because there's so many different media outlets, social media outlets, or information outlets. We're just mirroring that in fashion to be able to supply all of that changing trend. And if you're making something really fast and you have to make it inexpensively so that you can keep up with the trends, you're not going to spend a lot of time on the materials. As I said before, I support the mills. I empathize with them. They are trying to make a living. And if they're told that they can make, if they're going to constantly be selling 20,000 yards every other week to a H&M or a Shein order, but it's got to be this price, they don't care about the integrity of the materials. They don't care about the toxicity. And so they're more often than not, if it's a very inexpensive material, it's much higher in toxicity than if it's a higher value material. And so that's part of that rise in fast fashion is a rise in toxicity, as well as you can just see it because now they're testing these clothing heaps all over the world, and also so many people in the supply chain getting ill, right? Really sick.
Yeah.
Just follow up on the slow fashion and
So the slow fashion is a strange one because they coined that phrase, I think, just to be opposite from fast fashion, to show that they have high value products that were made more thoughtfully. So more communication, more fittings. It fits better. The seams are stronger. The fabric drapes better. So you take a longer time to create a product before you go into multiples of it. And so that, I think, is why it's called slow. And yet you can still produce 20,000 units of one style over the course of, maybe instead of a week, you do it over 6 months or a year. And I think that's why they call it slow. Doesn't mean non-toxic. It just means probably less toxic because the materials that they've invested in are a little higher in quality and the construction. And there's a lot more, if a customer is paying more money for it, they're thinking a little deeper about it, and they will hold their brands accountable, a little bit more accountable than a fast fashion purchase. And then the difference between slow fashion and natural is that natural fashion is slow fashion. We take all the steps, all the thoughtful steps of the fit, the drape, the materials, the performance of the fabric, and we only use green chemistry. So all the fibers, the dyes, the chemistry is from plants, minerals, and proteins, no petrochemicals, no toxins. And, organic fibers, sustainable fibers, nothing doused in pesticides or formaldehydes to preserve it in shipping.
Have you ever felt trapped in a cycle of stress and sleepless nights? I know I have. But since I've added Magnesium Breakthrough to my nightly routine, no joke, I've been able to quiet my mind, fall asleep fast, and stay asleep longer. And what sets this supplement apart is that while other magnesium supplements, and certainly all the other ones I've tried, and I've been taking magnesium for years, while all the other ones only give you 1 to 2 forms of magnesium, Magnesium Breakthrough contains all 7 forms. So, I never even heard of this. So it will not only help you fall asleep, but it will keep you regular and focus your mind, plus the many, many other things that magnesium does, which you've probably heard me talk about on this podcast, because as I said before, I've been taking magnesium for years and it's really, really helped me. But I love this magnesium because it contains all 7 forms of the supplement, and it's vegan, gluten-free, and soy-free. And also super important to me because, as we know, supplements aren't regulated. They don't contain always what they say they contain, but Magnesium Breakthrough has received a good manufacturing practice certification through third-party inspections, so you can trust by optimizers. So get this all-natural, full-spectrum magnesium supplement by going to buyoptimizers.com/switch4good and use promo code switch4good during checkout to save 10%.
Moving for a bit into solutions, because I'm not naked because we're on video, but I'm sure some of our folks listening in the intro were like, oh my God, right? Like what in the world? That's my whole closet, maybe. I mean, I think it's probably mine. What do you have for consumers, whether it be some rules to follow, some suggestive guidelines when buying clothes that are going to be good for their own health and the environment and possibly the animals as well? And Where do
Yeah.
they go? I mean, obviously you're a place to go, which we're going to get into
Okay.
what you do in your company. But, let's say somebody is, needs an outfit for this weekend. I mean, is there anywhere to go that's just like a company that we're used to, or a clothing place that we're used to? And then what do we search for on the tags, and what do we do?
Thanks. It's tough. It's really, really tough. It just depends on, I mean, lifestyle clothing is a little easier to go pure natural fashion. But if you're talking about some event that you have to, wear a very specific, like, I don't know, red carpet dress
Right. No, we can talk lifestyle. I mean,
yeah,
I hear you. I did
yeah,
say that, but
yeah.
we can talk lifestyle.
Right. So the thing is, if you're talking about every day, I would say the first thing is there's not a lot of brands out there making natural fashion with natural dyes, because it's unless it's coming from India or Japan, maybe a little from Africa, Europe. They're using natural fibers in abundance, and in fact, it's part of their culture, much more deeply embedded than ours. So the first thing is natural fibers, and if it's a man-made fiber, then a Tencel modal type of fiber, or a viscose, not a rayon. If it's bamboo, you just have to really trust that that brand is buying bamboo that isn't the old rayon process. So that's the first thing. All the natural fibers, silks, wool, linen, flax, hemp, cotton. Have I forgotten one?
No, but I think some of
Cashmere,
our listeners are
vicuna,
wanting to stay away from
animal, right?
silk and wool and
Right.
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 Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's pea silk, but I get it. Yes, because those are
Oh, what's that?
animal. Well, pea silk, it is animal. It is the moth, but the moth gets to live in a kind of a regular life with they can see and they can communicate with other moths, rather than the industrial way that they actually breed moths with no ability to see or move around. So check out pea silk if you are okay with an insect product. If you want to stay away from all the animal-based products, then do the linen, flax, hemp models, Tencel models. Make sure that it's a branded, like Lensing or Eucalyptex from eucalyptus trees.
Oh,
So all of those are great, and they're biodegradable. All the other natural, we call them cellulosics. So grass, anything from a grass, anything like banana tex. There's other what else? There's mushroom leathers now.
yeah. Banana leathers, pineapple
Banana leathers,
leathers.
pineapple leathers. So all of those, there's many plant-based options right now, which are fantastic. So that's number one. Number two, the dyes, the prints, the colors, that's an issue. So go for lighter colors. And you can see if it is, color grown cotton is gorgeous. The cotton, it was grown, it's being reintroduced. Color was bred out of cotton. It had a range of kind of pretty muted browns and deep greens and kind of a pinkish color. And it's being reintroduced into the market now. So off-whites, natural wool color up, stay away from wool. Like the hemp has a kind of it's a very natural color. And seek out the companies that are doing natural dyes. If it's got a print, no plastisols. So if you're wearing a garment that is a dark color base, it's dyed a dark color, and then you've got a white print on top of it, like Switch for Good right behind you. If that was printed onto a t-shirt, that more likely than not, it's not going to be a new process yet, because that process is expensive, but the old process is called a plastisol. So you just add plastic to the pigment ink that's already a petrochemical, and you print on top of the dark. That's where you're going to get the BPAs.
Ooh.
are in all those printing inks. So just lighter natural colors and cellulosic fibers. That's where you want to go. Children, do not buy children's sleepwear for your kids unless it has wool in it, because they douse it with fire retardants. So unfortunately, you have to just let the kids sleep in regular clothing, like, t-shirts and sweatpants. Yeah.
And the fire retardants, they're on textiles too, right? Like in our
Yes.
car. Where are they?
They're in your car.
And
They're if you're talking in your home, it was, and I think that they're trying to ban it now or limit it. In your home, it's in all your beds. It's in your upholstery fabrics, your curtains, your floor coverings. And the chemical industry has pushed it into our children's apparel, sleepwear, not grown-up sleepwear, because they, whatever, they just say, grown-ups can sleep in whatever they want, but kids, we're going to mandate that it's going to be policy that if you're going to make a cotton or polyester sleepwear for children, it's going to be doused in fire retardants, because they're going to be sleeping and the bed's going to spontaneously combust or something silly like that.
It probably was a rule that started when there were more radiators that were like the old-fashioned radiators right underneath the
Yes.
and maybe and when people smoked more, it was much more of a issue with falling asleep on the couch. So it seems like it is a rule that should be updated because
Agreed.
the risk of fires like that are less now.
Right. Yeah.
Can you go into silk a little bit? A lot of people who, Dotsie, you probably get this too, but they'll say, well, why don't you wear silk? Tell us about, I would say, well, because the silkworms are killed when they get the silk, but I didn't know any details. Can you give us more of an idea of what the life of a silkworm is that's raised in a...
Yeah, I don't. I just know that there's two different ways, and they breed animals and they breed fibers and and plants. So the breeding of these, and insects, obviously, these insects, there is a way that they breed out all of their ability to actually move or see. And that's regular silk, so that it just stays on a tray and produces the fiber. And then there's piece silk that actually they don't breed all of these qualities out of the insect. They just I think they do kill the insect afterwards, though.
Right.
So, but they actually have a regular life as
Because
much.
she's in a cocoon and she makes a cocoon around her, and then when they want
Right.
isn't it the silk from that cocoon? Then they
Right.
take it. And
Right.
then
And I've read that they boiled them alive to get her out and remove her from the cocoon.
right.
So that we'd have to look into, but thanks for mentioning that, because I do remember that, and that's probably part of this piece silk certification, that you don't do that. And then I don't know what they do or how they get the insect out, or the larvae out, right?
Right.
Is it pea silk as in the letter P, or PEA, or PE?
No, piece, PEACE.
Oh, peace silk. Oh,
That makes more sense, right? I was thinking P too.
that is such greenwashing, but okay.
I know. Yeah, these terms, right? Somebody mentions it, sounds really good, and then it becomes a category, right? Natural fashion. I mean, it's synonymous, and we hope that it doesn't get greenwashed as well, but that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah. I was just thinking about how many of us, which is maybe all of us, are creatures of habit. We find something we like and we we return to the same stores and the same places, and we just, we just habitually do life. And I was thinking about when Louis, your lovely partner, Louis Pasillos, was on the podcast, and we were talking about plastics. And I have used plastic cycling water bottles forever because I'm a creature of habit. So they're easy. I like them. And I have one. This is terrible. I was told I was going to throw these away. The lip or the nipple comes up, you can press it back down. It doesn't spill. It's all these silly little things that I like about them. I like be able to shake a protein shake up in them. And then I told him, But they get kind of grimy and gross at the nipple part where it comes, especially the protein powder will sit in there. So I put him in the dishwasher and he just about had a heart attack. I know.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know this. I know you're not supposed to heat plastic and then make it worse. So for a while, I was using aluminum. I mean, like I'm talking maybe a month or 6 weeks. And then here I am again. What do you, I mean, I know this isn't necessarily your swim lane, like, habit change, but you changed.
Take the top off and drink out of the stainless steel or glass.
I just need to get rid of it.
Right?
I mean, right, like just do it, Dotsie.
Yeah.
Like, hello, don't be an idiot is really what you need to say to
No.
me. But for all the people out there, like, oh, I like this kind of clothing, and you know what I mean. I've leaned in this one designer, this one, this, but the list is endless of
even workout clothes. I mean, I'm a little stuck about workout clothes because
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we jump
There you
out
go.
of the habits if we want to make a change? Because it's all the habits in terms of what dresses us.
Performance has always been a hugely important aspect of design for me. I geek out on all of the, the engineered part of a garment, whether it's all the, all the bells and whistles of where a seam is placed, or the trim, or the cool elastic or seaming or zippers. So when we were athletes before plastic, so pre-50s, right?
Right.
We were, wait. So I'll say that in a second. But when I was at the North Face doing this backyard hoodie for them with this nonprofit called the Fiber Shed, we made a hoodie. I joked around when people would ask me what I was doing because I was so busy. I said, well, we're making a hoodie that's good enough to eat. And they're laughing at me and they're like, yeah, that's really funny. And I said, well, no, it's not. Cotton's a carbohydrate. And everything that is in this hoodie is actually organic cotton, color grown cotton. The color is enhanced with a mordant that is a natural tannin, which tannins are really healthy for you. And they help with, that's also in your vitamins. That natural tannin was ferrous sulfate, and we use ferrous sulfate, ferrous lactate. We use iron, your natural iron vitamin. We use that powder that they put in baby formula to enhance the color of our textiles. It also enhances the antibacterial properties of it. And so that's one performance aspect. But when I was up at the North Face working with them, I looked in their archives and they had a framed statement on the wall that said cotton kills. And I'm like, what? You're talking about non-organic? They go, no. If you're mountain climbing and you sweat underneath your layers and you've got a cotton t-shirt, you're going to get hyperthermia and you're going to die. Hyper or hypo? I forget. You're going to freeze. Hypo. And I said, well, that's kind of harsh, don't you think? Because before the 50s, we didn't have polypropylene underwear that actually stinks after you wear it long enough because it retains all the bacteria. We had cotton, wool, silk, hemp, linen, flax. We had fibers, and somehow we survived. We had athletes, Dotsie. I mean, aren't you you're a super athlete. Didn't you win a silver? It's like if you were limited by the green clothing, that you were wearing, and you doused it in like ferrous sulfate to help with the performance aspects of the cotton outfit you were wearing in your competition, then you would just live with it and your body would adjust. And I actually think after a while, after making my entire wardrobe and wearing it all the time, when I don't wear it, my body's like, where is it? Where is it? I'm missing this. It's like it's comforted by it. So what if you
but it's not just
sweat?
about us. It's about how fast we can go in the fibrous materials. The fibrous natural materials are much slower than all the jank that we pour on our speed suits.
The
They gotta
fibers,
figure that out.
the
natural fibers.
The natural fibers are slower. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
right. That's
tunnel.
Performance. Right. Okay.
I know. And it's
there you go. So that's a great segue because there's been no natural innovation for 56, 75 years. All we need is some money. It's all right there. And the military has libraries filled with innovation, pre-plastic and petrochemicals that they just don't release. We could start there because, of course, for the military, they spun and they wove and they knit fibers, yarns, and green chemistry, because that's all they had to heighten performance for their soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the money was. That was the only innovation in performance at that time. We just take it and run with that. And I'm sure that it would be equally as effective if we had the money to put into that engineering, right? Of the yarn and of the chemistry. So I totally agree with you. We're behind. But just wear the natural, if you're not
Absolutely right. Yeah.
a super athlete like you are, and even if you are, whenever you possibly can, you just fill your days with natural underwear, no color, 100% cotton, hemp, silk, whatever the natural fiber is. If you can add some color to it because it's a dye, like we use chestnuts and iron, we use madder root, we use natural indigo, we use elderberry, which was the last project that I just did, and these have medicinal qualities. And these colors were discovered not because they were pretty, they were discovered because it was a medicinal experiment in food or medicine. And they also discovered that it could actually, dye something or stain something. And that's how most of the natural dyes came to be.
Right.
So we just don't have the innovation money.
Yeah.
Because the petroleum industry is so huge. Of course, the plastic industry, they're pushing all that.
Of course.
You talked about cotton and hemp.
Yes.
Quite a bit. Can you talk a little bit? Hemp is something that I'm always been interested in. It has a checkered history with the U.S. government, and it might be one of the reasons why we don't see as much hemp in our clothes these days. Can you talk a little bit about the history of hemp and why it's not more ubiquitous and what makes it so great as a fabric?
So I love hemp. I have not incorporated enough of it into my apparel or into my textiles yet. So I am just going to go high level or as high as I can with it without going above I think it's 0.3 or 0.03% THC. And that's the issue right there. The cotton industry has a lobbying group that is very strong. It's a commodity. They've got Cotton Incorporated for their marketing arm. They have a lot of strength in America in government as well. And one way to keep hemp, their competition, out of the race, to be in everybody's closet, is to say that hemp is actually a cannabinoid, or from cannabis. It's a cannabis plant, and that's an illegal substance. And so, we're going to ban it from being grown and from being turned into fiber and clothing. And it's mostly because of the cotton industry that the federal government would even care. They don't care, and then over the last few years, it's been grown and legalized in a number of states. It was first legalized for veterans, but it could be part of the Farm Bill. I'm sorry?
It was legalized for veterans for pain and dealing with their trauma.
Okay. So maybe that was it. But then a lot of the farmers, they utilized that loophole and they were growing hemp so that they could convert it into fiber. So it wasn't just for pain. So that's the only way that we could grow hemp in America, is if it was a veteran that was growing it or owned the farm. And then there was a lot of investment over the last, 5-6 years in hemp growing. And then this THC requirement or restriction came to head, and they couldn't get insurance on their crops and on their land and on their farming facilities, because if the THC level was tested in the hemp fiber, it's just a fiber. Nobody's going to smoke this fiber. But if the level by mistake, just a random plug in a bale of hemp, if it was above tolerance level, the entire crop was banned from going into the supply chain, and they lost all of that investment for that season. And that's why they weren't getting insurance. And that's why nobody's investing in growing hemp anymore. But it's the magic fiber. It's so easy to grow. It doesn't take pesticides to grow it. It creates really rich, deep, long roots. So it enriches the soil. It's a strong fiber like linen flax, less expensive. It has some antimicrobial, antibacterial properties to it as a fiber, as a yarn, as a fabric, similar to wool. So it's a super fiber, but it's just being, restricted because not Cotton Incorporated per se, but the cotton industry has lobbied a campaign against its success.
It seems to me that just that, because I was just in DC the last couple of days lobbying for our bill, and they do the same thing with food, right? Like that they do with, and clothes are kind of like food, where as far as the pricing goes, the really good forest food and the really good forest clothes are so much more expensive than the fast food or the fast fashion. And people have been trained, though. They expect the cheap stuff. They expect the $5 meal, and they expect the $8 tee from H&M or Zara. I mean, that's what people have gotten to know. So then when they go to, California Cloth Foundry, I mean, right, I can only imagine how luxurious and soft your bath towels are.
Yeah.
But it's $82 for a bath towel.
Right.
So how do you even begin to compete? Because that's just not in too many people's budget. I mean, not that they probably know that maybe a $5 bath towel is just like literally all petroleum, after this conversation, but that's really steep. I've never owned an $82 bath towel in my life. It's worth it, I'm sure. No doubt there. We've, been clear about that on this podcast, but what are people to do?
So thank you. That's really important. And that's something that I constantly compare food to fashion, to natural fashion. You eat less, you wear less, it lasts longer. I mean, I've been wearing this hoodie weekly, probably 3 or 4 times a week, and I wash it every week for 5 years, 6 years. I'm going to wear it until it falls apart. The color, I mean, it's washed out right now because I've got natural light coming through the studio, but the color, it fades, but it fades like your favorite pair of jeans, and you just you start to love it and you miss it it's like your security blanket. That's the same thing with really good food. You eat some really good food and your body says yes, and it craves it, and you don't need a lot. You also don't need a bath towel every 5 years. I've still used you need it every 20 years. Amortize that cost. A 20-year-old bath towel that is been shedding into your waterways, that has absolutely nothing on it but organic cottonseed oil and some soda ash, which is from, it's from it's a natural occurring mineral. So everything that you are wearing on your body and that bath towel, every time you use it, even if it sloughs a little bit of the yarn or the fiber, and it goes to a very thin towel in 25 years, for those 25 years that you've put nothing on your body that could be toxic. The other part of it is we don't have the volume to go overseas and really police and partner up with the manufacturer that would have the same quality and the same healthy materials, and be able to do it for a lower price with a higher volume. So if we had 50,000, 100,000 customers and they all wanted a bath towel, the price would go down because we could deliver it knowing that we'd speak to our entire supply chain and see if we could get a slightly better price. The other part of it is, even if at that price, that the entire supply chain is being paid well and they're not risking their lives to produce this. So,
wow.
you amortize that price, and then you go and drink 1 cup of coffee that was made a turmeric latte, that was made for you, and you've just paid $8.50 for it,
I can do an $82 bath towel if it's going to be with me for 20 years. I mean, hello, then I've really bought, it's like a $5 bath towel. I
Right.
mean, or less than. Because
Yes.
I mean, I feel like I buy them, I don't know, every 3 or 4 years, or because they
Right.
get icky, and they break down, and then they become where they're like sandpaper versus soft for the first year.
Yeah, well, that's also the fibers. They're shorter.
Okay.
It's called upland. Our fibers are extra long. It's like Pima. They compete with Pima, but it's just a little bit shorter, so we can keep it in the American supply chain. So there's technical, they're combed. So you lose 20% of that fiber. And as we talked, Alexandra, the fiber goes into other waste streams, like the medical industry. They use it as the cotton that's in their vitamin jars, and it goes into soil with the local farmers. So all of this, we know where it all goes. And it's also the reason it can last 25 years is because it's a longer fiber. It's a higher quality material.
Okay.
It's
It
a
seems
higher
even,
quality spinning process, knitting process, weaving process. Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. I was thinking it sounds even more important than the shirt I have on, because
Yeah.
every day you're like, you rub your whole body down to get dry
Yeah.
with this piece of fabric. Okay. I'm doing it. That's my commitment.
You said something very important, which is to buy fewer clothes and keep them longer. Can
Right.
you talk about what happens to clothes when we
Yeah.
send them to Goodwill? We feel good about ourselves because
Mhm.
we're sending them to Goodwill. But then of course we go out and replace them. That's the American way. What
Right.
about the waste stream of discarded clothes from the United States?
Right.
A lot of them end up in other countries. There's like a tier hierarchy of like the t-shirt that is sort of the most ratty and stuff will go to other countries. And what
Right.
happens?
The sorting process. No, it's horrible. And don't feel good about donating your clothing to Goodwill. If there is a family that your kids grew out of the clothing, or you've grown out of the clothing, or it's going directly to an organization where, because we're all women here, I can say it's going to an organization where your professional clothing is going to a woman who's going to use it for her job and interviews, great. But if you're going to throw it into a Goodwill bin, it's just another marketing box tick. I don't know how to say that, but
Toy
Tell me,
almost.
I just went to Goodwill 2 days ago.
Yeah, I
Tell me
mean,
what's wrong with that and what happens to these clothes?
they just process it and try to sell it. And the idea was great when there was a limited amount of clothing and it was very expensive, but it's now a, like social media, it's kind of an addiction. So you feel okay if you buy something, wear it a couple times and give it to Goodwill, because you think that you're sending it back into a system that will take care of it and utilize it. And there's too much of it. And there's been way too much of it for many, many years. In fact, Oxfam was doing that in Europe and Africa, all the African continents, and Ghana was highlighted in some discussion lately. It's been all over the news, but no more. They do not want it. It's like, do not send us any more of your clothing.
So it's ending up in the trash ultimately.
That is right. That is because
filling our landfills, which is what we were hoping it wouldn't do.
There's too much of it. There's no reason to feel good about donating it to a Goodwill or an Oxfam or a clothing donation any longer. Yeah. You have to fix it or find a home for it. is my goal. Or just wear until it's completely, if it's natural, it's completely, falling apart, and plant it.
Yeah, if it's one of yours.
Yeah.
And there's also the repurposing of clothes too, where you can
Yes.
make a skirt out of a coat or something, right?
Right. And there's clinics happening and lots of activities around that, social activities. Nonprofits are doing it. Big brands are doing it now. Yeah. Patagonia's done it. Yeah.
Dotsie, how are you feeling? I'm feeling guilty, but also I'm feeling excited because so I don't buy, as I told you, Lydia, when we spoke last week, I don't buy new clothes except for workout clothes and underwear. So that I buy from the online stores now. And then I feel no guilt about giving them to Goodwill, but now I will. I didn't used to. So I used to think I was doing a good thing, but now I see I can improve. I can improve by raising the quality of the things that and not getting involved, playing that game of buying stuff that's not well made, that doesn't last long, even if it's used. And of course, my workout gear, I'm going to need to really look at, which I appreciate you making me look at this. It makes, it's a challenge, but I will feel better about it.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that. And it's a slow process. So don't feel guilty. It's just now that you have a bit more knowledge, just like in food, the more knowledge you have, the more you can go out and make really educated choices and what works for you and what works for your style. I'd protect my skin first underneath. If you're going to, consignment shops, that's how I shop too. Love it. Love it. It's great because you can get fun clothing.
Yeah.
Just buy as much of the natural as possible and steer clear of the petrochemicals like the polyesters and the nylons.
I'm going to start with the bath towels. And I was thinking about with clothes, it's so silly. I don't know why I thought this, but I would always buy new clothes and then I wash them because I'm aware. I learned a ton today. I didn't know all of this, but I was aware there's like yucky stuff on the clothes. So then I heat the yucky stuff and it probably brings it out more, but I'm like, oh, I washed them. They're fine now,
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking when I get these towels from you, like I don't need to wash them. I mean, after I've used them,
No, you do.
When they
Yeah,
first
you do.
arrive, though, I just use them.
It's a great question. It's a great comment. We didn't get enough of the cottonseed oil off, so we send a little packet of soda ash, which I said is a natural occurring mineral, and we say throw it in your wash with your with your clean green laundry detergent and do it on hot and get some of that cottonseed oil off of it, so make it really hot. But the other thing is, I know you're not supposed to wash in hot too often, but if you're washing in hot and it is, natural chemistry, that's just like washing your dishes, right? So it's not really harming the environment. You're just borrowing the water. You're borrowing the heat. Hopefully we'll have better energy sources soon. My whole thing is everybody talks about how thirsty cotton is. We didn't today, but and how high water consumption natural dyes are and natural printing. The natural chemistry, green chemistry is higher in water consumption, but we're borrowing that water. And when we send it back, it's as clean or maybe even chock full of nutrients and beneficial minerals, which is, I composted our cutting room waste and found out that we actually created really rich, high nutrient, pH balanced, beautiful soil with our compost. So I feel like if you're using these natural resources, borrow them and be regenerative about it, regenerative farming, return it back even better than when it began or when you borrowed it. Improve upon it. So if you're using lots of water, improve that water quality. And that's, that's how I say, use some hot water on this one. Get the towel.
I wouldn't mind having towels with some moisturizing effect myself with cottonseed.
That's true. It's cottonseed oil.
Not a bad thing,
it's really good for you. And cottonseed oil, as long as it's organic, is great. In fact, it's in our food systems, right? The fiber in food systems were married together pre-plastic. They worked together. They were planted together, and our dyes as well.
I'm going to steal one more piece of information because I feel like you know the answer because my cotton towels are going to arrive. And I've tried all of the natural detergents, and my husband and I are both athletes. We're stinky people. We stink up some cycling kits badly. And they come out still stinky with all the natural detergents. So I'm back to Tide, but I can't wash my California Cloth Foundry towels in Tide. Obviously, that would be terrible. So what do I use? What is your favorite natural laundry detergent?
I'm using the sheets now, the dried sheets, because it has no plastic packaging. So whatever, something
I don't even know what
fresh,
you're talking
not
about.
dried sheets, but they're sheets of soap.
Yeah. You
Oh.
can get them from eCover or eCover.
Yes,
whatever
eCover,
it's
that's
called.
right.
Yeah.
I've used eCover. I like them. So here's another thing. I use the laundry detergent. It's a boosting detergent or boost called Borax. Do you know what Borax is?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I have heard of
so
that.
use that. That will help boost. And that actually, it mostly has soda ash in it, which is what I'm giving with all our towels.
Right.
So it's got
Okay.
soda ash, baking soda, and just throw baking soda in with with your laundry sheets, right? Don't use Tide, don't use those plastic containers anymore, but use
Okay,
that
okay.
boosting if you don't mind I wouldn't on our colored items, but you can on our towels. You can also use any of those brighteners that are only with hydrogen peroxide, the oxygen bleaches.
Yeah.
So oxygen bleaches, the borax, which boosts your laundry detergent, the sheets, Alexandra, which one did you say with eCover, right?
eCover. And what about vinegar? Because
Right.
I've done that.
I put vinegar in, and I put vinegar and baking soda in, and my husband says it could blow up something. I don't know. He said, "Don't you remember in high school?"
Right.
In high school, and guess what? I didn't blow up anything. So I used the baking soda and the vinegar and an eCover sheet. And
the other thing I wanted to say, turn them inside out, stick them out in the sun. The sun is a natural cleansing agent. It's like our best friend if you're talking about getting the stink out.
Is eCover a website? I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Oh, it's a brand. It's a brand.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's just
okay.
And by the way, it does come in a plastic tray, unfortunately, right?
I see it.
The ones that I have don't. So I don't know.
Really?
Over. Yeah. So
maybe it was something else I used. Okay.
There are laundry sheets now that just come in plastic paper. Plastic paper. I can't believe I just said that.
Right.
Paper.
Good. I'll have to look for those because yeah. So I might be incorrect. So you guys check out eCover or any other of they're waterless. They're sort of just sheets of soap.
Okay.
Thank you, Lydia, so much for being on the show.
Wow, we did it. That was amazing.
Thank you too.
And Dotsie is going to get naked after the show.
Yes. We all should every day.